going on? Hey, Bob Cooney here. It is Tuesday, probably where you are. It is Wednesday here, on this going into the third month of lockdown in Australia, and I am freaking thrilled to bring to you today Robert Scoble. Bob, say hi.
Hey, it's an honor to be on your show.
Yeah, man, dude, so happy for you to take the time, and glad we're gonna get a chance to do this. This is gonna be fun. We're coming to you live on multiple Facebook channels, Twitter via Periscope. We're on Twitch. We're on beingvirtual.tv. In a couple of more weeks, we'll be live streaming to YouTube once that copyright strike goes away, but we won't talk about that. And I think I might have got approval to go live on LinkedIn Live through my friend Howard McAuliffe, who, me and his dad go back to the laser tag days, and it turns out his wife works for LinkedIn and runs the team that does LinkedIn Live. So
we'll get me an account too.
Yeah, dude. As soon as I get in, then we'll see if we can open up some referral channel.
Or I'll just come on your show.
Yeah, dude, and he's one of the smartest guys I know, and he's been in the location-based entertainment industry forever, and obviously that business has been decimated, like many have. I don't want to just whine about that, but the travel industry and the event business, which we'll probably touch on. We'll talk about Beyonce at Burning Man. I loved that blog post, dude. Let's start there, because I brought it up. What was your thinking that led to that, and what did you mean?
Well, my wife and I have been in the conference business for decades. In fact, she still is. She works at VMware on the conference team there that has, 25,000 people coming to an event every year. Actually, they have two big ones like that, one in Europe and one in the States. And obviously, they're both canceled right now because of the COVID crisis. And they're going to do a virtual show, right? And which is basically a TV show on like what you're doing, right? Yeah. Years ahead of time. Who knew? I was watching Microsoft build this morning, and they're doing the same thing we are, right? Yeah. A few people in front of microphones in their homes, talking about technology, right?
Yeah, I saw one of the leading speakers, talking about all this live streaming stuff. Did a thing, how to take your conference virtual, and he wound up doing an hour-long webinar with bullet points on slides and a little video up in the corner, and I'm like, oh my God, dude, eat your own dog food. I think webinars are. How many webinar invites do you get a week now?
Oh, quite a few. A lot of Zoom calls. All my friends have Zoom calls. It's like let's do an afternoon Zoom call and the evening Zoom call and mid evening. I'm talked out.
So anyway, but back to the event thing. Like your post was about, you have to do something big, grandiose, like unexpected, and your recommendation to Burning Man was that they hire Beyonce. Now, did you actually say that? Did you have that conversation with somebody?
No, I've been talking to a few people sort of involved there, and they're going through the same thing, and their problems are much deeper because, like Microsoft Build, most of the reason you're there is to see the keynotes and meet a few people, right? Burning Man, you're there to wear a costume and be experiential and be crawling on art and, watching the thing burn and going to a temple. And it's a very experiential thing, and going and seeing some great music, right? That's really hard to recreate on what we're doing right now, right? Basically a Brady Bunch kind of thing. Doesn't work.
My prediction is that, kind of like when I first saw Travis Scott's Fortnite event, it blew my mind. Not because of what it was, but because of what it will become.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to see the same thing
stuff, right? For people who haven't experienced Fortnite or one of these music events, there's been 3 of them now with 20 million people each. So that you get a huge amount of scale, right? Who did the first one? It was
Marshmello.
Marshmallow. And I saw Marshmallow in the Sahara tent at Coachella, right? So I saw the real analog Marshmallow.
You experienced the
I
energy.
saw the dude on the stage, right? Just a few feet from where I was. And they had 100 LED screens all around doing this amazing visual stuff right on the screens. And some of that comes through in Fortnite, right? And Fortnite actually has some things that they can do that you can't do with a real audience. You know, you can't make me fly like Travis Scott flew us around the universe, right? And make us, right? And that was pretty cool. You can't do that in real life. You can sort of fake it on screens around you, but you can't really feel immersed that way. And with VR, you're going to see some mind-blowing things. I mean, just half an hour ago, I was playing Supernatural, which is an exercise app, and I'm listening to EDM music and having to really get worked up because I wanted to get some exercise before I got on the show to get my blood going. And it's real effective. My heart rate on my Apple Watch was 150 beats per minute, right? And you're immersed. You forget you're in the real world. You forget about the real world unless you hit your hand on a piece of the real world, like
I've got scars on my hands from playing box VR and Thrill of the Fight and Creed and all of those. I've had to get gloves to cover my hands, so I stopped cutting them up. Yeah.
Irina and I just went to all these R&D labs to understand the science behind that, right? You go to Stanford and you meet with Jeremy Bailenson, and he has you walk across planks, and he's doing all sorts of work with stroke victims. And VR is very effective in a whole lot of mental illness kind of fixes or not really cures, but fixes, right? Yeah. Pain. VR up at University of Washington, they did a bunch of research with VR and pain. So when I was advising the conference businesses, the first thing was, can you get any of that? Can you get your customer into VR? Well, most of them can't, because how many people have VR right now? I mean, Oculus Quest has sold maybe 1 million headsets, right?
Yeah.
That's a nice number, but it's not very many, even at a technical event.
I was talking to Leland Hedges from Pico last night, and we're going to bring you that interview live in a coming show. But we were talking about as the cost of the headsets comes down, and and their ability to lock down their firmware, so you can get an out of the box, like a kiosk mode product. He's getting brands ask if they can buy thousands of headsets to deliver to media influencers. I'm sure you've got a freaking room full of headsets that you get, right? And so, like I was thinking about CinemaCon. So CinemaCon, which shut down, you get thousands of theater owners from around the world come and they watch the trailers for the first time for movies coming up, and then the stars and the director comes on stage and talks about it. It's a $1,700 ticket. You could include a Pico Goblin 2 for $300 in with that ticket and put it on. Yeah. So I think we're going to see that happen, and I think more people are going to get VR headsets because companies are just going to give them away.
Yeah, it's even for a small little consulting business like what Irina Cronin and I do, we have clients down in LA, and if I have to, before the virus, flying down to LA costs $300, plus it takes 3 hours each way, right? The Uber ride costs $60 to go and visit a client. The dinner I eat the night before, it costs $50, and a hotel room costs $300 to $400. So I could send my clients a couple of Oculus Quests, and in 2 meetings, I've paid for those things, right?
Absolutely.
And both of us are probably happier because I didn't have to go down there, and they could meet with me whenever they want, right?
And then we just have to figure out how to recycle all that shit, because next thing people are going to have boxes of VR headsets that they've been given, and that's going to happen, actually.
Well, right now nobody has VR headsets, so that's a problem.
That's a problem.
You can always give them away to schools and stuff like that for a while, but you're right. These things, they're plastic and a little bit of glass and a little bit of silicone up in the front, right? It's
well, look. One of the things I suggested is that if that happens, we come up with a recycle program. We donate them to schools. Right, and we donate them to aged care centers and all of these places where the impact is huge. So,
and schools are not going to be able to afford them anytime soon.
Yeah.
Right. mean, we're really going into an almost Great Depression. I don't know that I want to call it a Great Depression yet, but it's going to be a pretty tough economic time. My brother's wife is a school teacher, and they just furloughed her on Fridays, right? They're not paying her on Fridays up in Portland because they don't have the money.
Yeah.
And the tax revenues have just plummeted everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So
small business owners, and you look at the unemployment numbers. Small business owners aren't in that number, but they're failing like crazy, and so yeah, I don't want to talk about that. So
really,
let's get into let's talk about the book, The Infinite Retina.
This is, Irene and I a year and a half ago saw that something major was coming anyways because of technology. We were seeing factories start to get more and more robots, right? And we were seeing the ability to compute in a new way, right? With 3D sensors, with AI, with glasses of some kind. We can talk about Apple glasses soon that were rumored today. And we saw a whole bunch of things coming. Autonomous vehicles, right? Autonomous vehicles alone in the next 20 years are going to put out of work 1 million, 2 million truck drivers and Uber drivers and taxi drivers, right? Yep. Their jobs are gone.
Parking lot attendants.
I can tell you definitively their jobs are gone within 2-3 decades, right? They're not going to survive. So we saw this stuff coming, and I think this is why Andrew Yang was talking about guaranteed minimum income before COVID hit, right? There was a bunch of things happening already that were going to cause joblessness. And the book is really about 7 industries that are going to see radical change because of technology that hasn't even arrived yet or just is arriving, right? And that was real interesting talking to factory owners and retail stores. I mean, look at Amazon Go stores. They have no people in them. You walk in, you grab a bag of chips and you leave, and it charges you for them, right? It has spatial computers watching you, right? And it's very similar technology to what runs the autonomous car. And it's very similar technology that is what's going to be on the new Apple glasses.
Machine vision. It's what Zero Latency used in their first version of their free roam VR system, were machine vision cameras. It's amazing tech, yeah.
Yeah.
It's getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's going to be, like you said, in LiDAR cameras and phones and
When I first interviewed the guys in Israel who made the 3D sensor, that Apple bought the company, PrimeSense, the sensor was like a stick of chewing gum. Now it's a little hole in your iPhone, right? And in just a few years, it's shrunk down to that, right? And soon you're going to have one right here on your glasses, right, or on your right eye. And so you're right. That's what the tech industry does. It makes things cheaper and smaller and faster, right?
And one of the things that Apple does is they create volume, right? And so, one of the reasons we have VR today, Palmer Luckey was able to take the tech that was going in smartphones that Apple literally created that industry, right, with the iPhone.
Yeah.
Small, cheap LCDs, inertial measurement units, right? Yeah. GPS chips being really small. And that was basically the tech that became the Oculus Quest or the Oculus Rift.
Yeah, absolutely true. I mean, this is one of the original Oculus Rifts, right?
Yeah, and when you get volume in the hundreds of millions, prices come down and things get more accessible. And so So let's talk about so you wrote this blog post about why Apple is so let's start with Apple bought Next VR.
Yeah.
Right? $100 million rumored, and so what's
which
your
wasn't
that led you to write the blog post, right?
The investors were not real happy with that company. It didn't make as much money as they were thinking. It had a big investment in it, and this company took 360 cameras, professional style 360 cameras, and took them to sporting events and music events, and let people in VR watch a music festival or watch a sporting event. And it was all right. They were just about to release a volumetric camera.
Yeah.
That's what Apple wants for the glasses, because the next stage is to put the sporting field in some sort of 3D on your coffee table so your glasses can see that.
So right? They were supposed to show a demo of that at Mobile World Congress in 2019 with Qualcomm. And I looked, and I haven't found any evidence online that demo actually happened. Do you know? So basically, for
It's
those of you
really
who aren't
hard
aware,
to do.
they were talking about 6 DOF video, so you could
Yeah,
move around in a
yeah,
video in
yeah.
6 dimensions, or 3 dimensions. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, Intel has a studio we visited down in near LA, which has a huge dome with 100 cameras all the way around the dome, and it captures whatever's inside the dome in volumetric in 3D, so you could watch a new kind of movie in these glasses. But that dome costs many millions of dollars, and it had a sizable data center underneath it, because each of the cameras came to a computer, and then a set of computers joined all those images together, turned them into a 3D point cloud, right, and stored them. That's a huge data set, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of detail on actors, right? This is from high-end movies. But we're soon going to see something like that come to a football stadium, right? Wow. A ring of cameras around the football stadium. In fact, this is why we visited Las Vegas' stadium with the guy who was putting 5G into the stadium. He said this is why the stadium owners want the 5G, because they can put a bunch of cameras around the ring of the stadium and capture it in volumetric, and then do all sorts of new things for these glasses that are coming. And this is why the industry is getting excited about 5G, because if this all starts working, right, if you get 5G and you have volumetric video coming to your glasses, and you can afford a pair of glasses to see this stuff, you start getting a new kind of media. In 5 years, we're not meeting each other flat. We're meeting each other in front of one of these cameras, and we can actually shake hands, right?
And Apple's got the money. And Apple's got the money to dump into that tech, and if it wasn't perfected, to perfect it and to produce the content, right? I mean, they're dumping. They could spend more than Disney and Netflix combined if they wanted to on content development.
Yeah. So they bought this company partly because this company has all the relationships with all the venues and understands how to set up equipment at music festivals. I've shot music festivals like Coachella. It's really hard to get a camera in there. In fact, one time I snuck a 360 camera in there, and all the EDM magazines made fun of me. And it's like, oh, a guy stuck a 360 camera into the Coachella. It's actually pretty cool. I could look around like I was actually there. Yeah. But I had to, grab a whole camera rig, and it wasn't even that good, right? These guys had cameras with more cameras and higher resolution, and computers that it was dumping to live and then streaming out over the internet so that you could watch a live basketball court, and somebody was switching cameras for you, to keep you close to the action, stuff like that. So they had a whole machine to do that, and then they had this intellectual property of this new camera coming that Apple wants to take advantage of, and probably Apple's working on its own camera too. It just makes. We know that Apple's making cameras because they're walking around people with backpacks with 360 cameras to map out stores and streets, right? So there's some expertise in this that's already inside Apple, and we'll see where it goes.
Hopefully their version of that works out better than the early release of Apple Maps.
Well, Apple Maps is an interesting one to think about, because Apple Maps, a mapping car drove down the front of my house, and it hasn't revisited in 22 months. And you start thinking, in the book, we talk about some of the autonomous cars that are driving around, and Tesla drives down my street every 5 to 10 minutes, right? Wow. So, yeah, think about that. I often go out there and talk to my friends, and I start counting how many Teslas I see, and it's literally like every 5 minutes a Tesla drives by. And think about all the data that thing can grab as it rolls by.
Yeah, and all the Teslas, right, with all the LiDAR cameras in them around the world. Like, and this is, what we should do another show talking about Facebook Live Maps and the Matrix and what they're building there. But that's a whole nother rat hole we'll get into. I want to stay focused on the Apple glasses thing for this show.
But mapping is really the foundation for the glasses.
Yeah.
If you have a new kind of map, and when you start talking about map, in fact, one of the guys who ran an autonomous car company, I think Luminar, who now I think is at Tesla, there's been a lot of people gotten bought, but he told me, don't think of a map of the future like you see on Google Maps on a phone. Think of a map like it looks like the actual street in 3D, and you can walk down the street in 3D.
Yeah.
And there's going to be so much data on that street that when you have glasses, you can do all sorts of things like turn the street into daytime at night, because it already has billions of points of data around the street, and it knows the street didn't move.
And
right?
the thing that terrifies me is Mark Zuckerberg is going to have his hands on the controls. But again, that's another conversation.
Well, Mark is going to compete with Apple with a pair of glasses where you play video games in the street. And he bought a company called Scape Technologies to do this, to do multi-party games in your front yard, right? Like Frisbee or shooting or something like that. But think about how much data he's getting if you have 5 people playing football, virtual football out on your front yard with glasses with, 1, 2, 3, 4 cameras plus a 3D sensor going.
Yeah.
He's going to know a lot about the world, and he's building a map.
Yeah.
And then there's Niantic, who's building a map, right? Niantic has Pokemon Go,
and Google is building a map, and all these media companies are building their own versions of the world, and we'll be living in it.
Glasses for different purposes. Some places in the world the Apple glasses will work better. Some places in the world the Facebook ones will work better. And and we haven't even started talking about Amazon or Tesla, right?
Yeah, crazy times. Oh my God. So all right, so Apple buys Next, and obviously people are asking you what the hell does it mean, and you've been talking about AR now since you were really the first influencer that was getting into the AR space and watching it. You've been doing it for more than a decade.
I was lucky enough to see a bunch of different companies doing different things like 3D sensor, AI. In Israel, I visited a bunch of companies, autonomous drones that are using AI and computer vision, right? And so you start seeing, this company's doing this company's doing this company's doing this, and they're starting to merge together, or Apple bought all 3. Yeah. It's like, what is going on, right? And it's like, they could make a pair of glasses someday that would blow your mind, right?
Yeah. So your hypothesis, and I think the conventional wisdom out there now amongst tech pundits, is that Apple's going to bring out glasses, and your position is they're not going to do VR, and you had 7 reasons why they're not going to do VR, and I want to step through those and debate them a little bit.
So we should define terms, because some of your audience probably knows VR really well and probably has a couple of these. Some of your audience has never been in one of these yet, right?
Yeah.
VR, has a couple of screens here, but you can't see the real world. You're completely in virtual reality. You're only seeing pixels. Now, some of the newer ones have cameras on the front, and so you're starting to see some mixed reality, that some people call it, or merged reality, right? Some halfway between AR and VR and the real world. This is all right. So I'm living in the real world. This is analog, right? If I have a HoloLens, let me get my HoloLens. And by the way, here's the 360 camera I snuck into Coachella, and this cost $6,000.
Oh, it's a bunch of GoPros. Is that? Yeah, I've seen a few of those. That's a classic.
The software alone costs $1,000 just to edit it, and now a $400 camera does way better job than that thing does, right? So in just 4 years, you can see what happens with the tech industry. It shrinks things and makes them better, right? So this is a big version of the Apple Glass, right? The Apple Glass will be sexy like these things, and it'll be small and lightweight, but it basically is going to do this very similar thing to HoloLens. And HoloLens has 4 cameras on the front, or 4 3D sensors that make a 3D map of your room. When you're moving it around, it actually maps out your room in 3D, right? And it displays on the glass, you see a virtual layer that's on top of the real world. So you see through the virtual layer to the real world, right? So this is true spatial computing, or mixed reality, right? Because I can make an alien come out of the wall. It's really badass, right? There's some real magic here when you get to see next generation augmented reality. You can have an avatar, a hologram coming out of the wall or on your table or on your screen or on your hand.
One of the things
right?
Doug Trumbull said, who's did the 2001 special effects for Odyssey, won the Academy Award, created show scan, kind of the godfather of motion cinema. He said that AR is more believable than VR because your brain, when it sees the things it knows is real, like it sees this table or it sees this microphone, and then a dinosaur comes walking across the table, your brain says, well, the table's real, the dinosaur must be real. And so there's something that really tricks your brain about VR, that the AR, that can be more believable than VR.
But it brings, all right, there's a lot of brain science there. AR, the small GPUs that are going to be in phones and in glasses are not able to do very much highly rendered things, right? You can do that if you have a big NVIDIA card. In fact, Unreal Engine just last week showed off a new Unreal Engine, which is the gaming engine that a lot of kids play with. And they're doing photorealistic stuff with almost ray tracing, right? Just amazing stuff. And when you're in VR hooked up to one of those, you get a visual effect that's pretty damn realistic.
Yeah.
When you put a little SpongeBob in my room bouncing around, that SpongeBob can't have that many polygons, right? It's all made of math, right? And the little GPU in your little Apple glasses or in your Apple phone can't do too many polygons because it'll melt down. It just has a budget. We call it a budget of polygons. You can show the user, something like 1 million polygons in a minute, right? And so there's going to be a gap between the real world. The real world is very sharp and it's analog. And then you got a little thing rolling around that's going to be digital. It's going to be pretty badass, but your mind has to. Your mind will know that
point number 5. Can we jump around? Can we do points out of order? Let's go to point number 5 of your blog.
Yeah.
That this stuff requires too much processing to do well on mobile devices.
Yeah.
But what about 5G? So 5G and NVIDIA last week talked about their edge rendering, and so the theory of the 5G world, and I talked to Terry Schussler from Deutsche Telekom, and there's an interview on my website about this, about the rendering is actually going to be done on the edge of the network in 5G and streamed to your device.
Let's talk about 5G for a second. 5G gives you 3 advantages, right? One, it gives you very low latency to the cell tower.
Yep.
It's around 2 milliseconds for a packet to get from your phone to the tower, right? Today with LTE, it takes 20 or 30 or 50, right?
100,
it's a lot slower. A packet goes a lot slower. So think about being in a football stadium while holding up your phone, playing a new kind of game against everybody. If it has a lot of latency, anything that goes around the stadium will be jittery or not in sync with everybody else, right? It won't be able to shoot it. But if you have low latency, you're going to be able to be very interactive with everybody else, and it will feel really nice. The second thing is, if you're close to so 5G is actually a spectrum of things, right? On the low end, you'll get maybe 10 megabits per second. Right now, my LTE phone gives me 4, right? So it'll give me 10 to 15 to 20 on the low end. And that's what most people are going to experience as 5G. But on the high end, if you have a millimeter wave radio, like is going to be in the next iPhone, and you are near a millimeter wave cell tower, like within a mile, right? You're going to get 20 gigabits. Well, let's call it 10 gigabits per second. 10 gigabits compared to 4 megabits.
Right?
Right? Huge.
And in 2 milliseconds, like
2 milliseconds.
Faster than our neurons fire.
There's a third advantage. I went to AT&T Park during the World Series. I was at AT&T Park with an AT&T iPhone, and I couldn't make a phone call because the cell towers were swamped. Everybody was trying to get an Instagram photo of them, at the World Series or get a text message. And in 5G land, everybody's going to be able to make a phone call because it can support many thousands of live connections from one tower.
Yeah.
And so the technology is much better for supporting multiple machines. And this is real important with the Internet of Things. When you have a factory, like I visited a factory in Ireland that makes alcohol, and I asked the guy who runs the factory, it's a brand new factory, I said, how many sensors are in this machine? He goes, there's so many sensors, I don't even know, and I built the machine, right? Thousands and thousands of sensors, each kicking off data to a database, and so that he can manage the process of making whiskey over at Jameson Distillery, right, near Cork, Ireland. And so you get a factory like that that's making something with tens of thousands or hundreds of or millions of sensors and robots, right? You go to an Amazon data center, distribution center, there's millions of robots rolling around now, all firing, data to the cloud somehow, right? So 5G is real interesting to those people as well.
And now Apple bought Intel's antenna business, right? To be able to do 5G antennas, so they weren't.
Well,
go ahead.
Not soon, because Intel was way behind Qualcomm.
Right.
Qualcomm has the best 5G radio and the most power efficient 5G radio because of its DNA and its investments. Yeah. And Apple was trying to get free of Qualcomm because Qualcomm charges $9 a radio. Your next iPhone, $9 out of that purchase is going straight to Qualcomm, right? Pisses off Tim Cook, right? And so he was trying to get Intel to do the 5G radio cheaper, and they just couldn't. They couldn't make the technology work. They were way behind Qualcomm.
But Apple spent $1 billion on that, and what they've done with chips, they in a 5-year period, they surpassed everybody on the ability to build ARM chips, right? And so my guess is that in the time frame that we're talking about, the next 3 to 5 years, Apple will have solved any kind of problems around antennas, 5G. Yeah. They'll be building it into glasses, into everything, and they'll be bleeding edge and driving the industry from an innovation standpoint, right?
And they'll be in control of every step, and that's Apple's secret sauce.
Yeah.
And I visited a couple factories over in China to understand why they have such power over everything, because they control every step of making something. Yep. And that's not true of anybody else. So almost anybody else. Huawei might be getting there close to it, but Trump is trying to keep Huawei out of America. So
that's a whole nother story.
or Apple's trying to keep them out.
And so look, I think that this notion that Apple can't do VR or can't do anything because of the processing speed that's required on these devices. Once 5G comes in, I feel like that argument doesn't hold water.
It still does, though, because it's a fundamental difference between AR, where you can see through the lens, and VR, where you don't see through it at all.
Yep.
And someday, theoretically, these two approaches are going to merge into one glass that can take light out of the air and all that, but we're not there. The optics I'm seeing out of Israel and other places like Apple's making their own optics just can't do both together.
Yeah.
So you have to choose. Do you want to bias your device to lightweight? Right? You have to sort of make some trade-offs when you're designing a product like this. Is it for walking around, riding a mountain bike, going shopping, right? Driving a car? Or is it for sitting in your living room playing a video game and you want the best graphics?
All right, so that was point number 3. We're jumping around the map. The whole notion of the processing power, I think, goes away with 5G. I feel like you've agreed with that.
Let's talk about, for that to be true, you have to have one of those millimeter wave radios near you.
Yep.
How soon is that going to be for even 30% of us?
3 years?
Maybe. My friend who's putting it in the stadium said 7.
Oh, wow.
Because
all right, we'll give that one to Robert. Let's give that one to Robert. You win that one. Wait, where's the ding?
5G. LTE, you can be 10 to 15 miles away from a cell tower and still get 4 megabits per second.
Yeah.
With 5G, with the high-end 5G, you have to be within 1.5 kilometers of a cell tower. So now they have to put a lot more cell towers in a city. So
and
think
it doesn't
about
go through like glass and stuff too, right? So they have to figure out how to get it into buildings.
Because the millimeter wave doesn't go through walls very well, and even trees. So you have to have line of sight to that cell tower. And so now you might need to put a mesh network in your home and upgrade your Wi-Fi so that you can bring that 2 to 10 gigabits per second into your house.
Yeah.
Now I'm lucky enough. I have an AT&T fiber line that just got put in, and so I'm getting 900 up and down megabits per second, right? So I'm almost 5G with this fiber line, right? And I haven't been able to tap it out.
But you don't get the latency with that you're going to get with 5G. I think that's or do you?
My fiber line gives me about 5 to 10 millisecond latency, so it's a little slower than 5G, but not much.
But for VR, is that enough to do edge rendering on the cloud?
All right, let's talk about that. So your packet to render, like if you're going to have a bank of GPUs, big NVIDIA cards up in the cloud somewhere, like at a Google data center or a Facebook data center.
Well, I think they're talking about putting them on the edge of the network, like where the tower is. They're talking about rendering at the tower, which is crazy to me. But
well, they're going to put a little box with 200 GPUs in the little box on the tower, right? And I've seen the cages for the towers are going to have a data center right on the tower. We call that fog, right? Because there's cloud, which is far away, right?
Yeah.
And there's the house. Yeah. And then this new
only
fog.
San Francisco.
But there's going to have to be a lot of things driving those fog servers as well. So, and also, if you're in England and I'm in California and I'm trying to play baseball with you or football or some shooting game, my packets still need to go over the fiber lines through the sea and still have that latency. So it's not an easy system to really run completely on the cloud. Facebook is going to try because Facebook knows it has a huge disadvantage to Apple. Apple has a huge advantage over everybody else because they have the best GPU in the phones. Their GPUs are twice as fast as the ones that are in the current high-end Qualcomm phones. And Google just announced today they're not even using the highest-end Qualcomm chipset because it's too expensive. So we're going to see Apple have a lead for a while. And then we'll see, do some of these other architectural approaches take hold if we have enough 5G in enough homes that we can start, delivering cheaper glasses that have very little processing on the glasses and most of the GPU processing up on the cloud somewhere.
All right, so let's go to number 2. Number 3. VR can't be used many places. So, which you've talked about Apple wanting to extend the phone. And I think one of the things you said, like you can't. Yeah. So let's talk about that. You showed a picture of your son.
Think about this versus this. Right? I have to wear these just to see. You're very blurry right now, right? I put these on, and these are augmented reality. They make my reality augmented. Wow, you're sharp all of a sudden, right? They're aiming at disrupting this market, which hasn't really seen much innovation for a couple 100 years. I mean, yeah, we have better coatings and thinner lenses and titanium frames. But they don't do anything different that a pair of glasses I tried from 100 years ago did, right? And Apple's going to try to disrupt this and they're trying to make a device that you never need to take off. If you're mountain biking, you don't need to take it off. If you're skiing, you don't need to take it off. If you're shopping, you don't need to take it off. Now compare that to this. Even if you put a bunch of cameras on this, so you can do some pass-through AR and see.
You're comparing eyeglasses to a VR headset, not smart glasses. So hold up the other one. Hold up the other AR thing. Now that's apples and apples, right? Neither of those. So if they wanted to shrink that, you're saying they can't shrink down a VR headset? It's impossible.
It's not that they can't shrink it down. VR to give you the field of view. So VR has some real advantages over AR. One, you have a 100-degree field of view in a VR headset, so you feel immersed in the media.
Versus looking at the world through a postage stamp, which is what some of the early AR headsets looked like, right?
Gives you about 40-degree, and magically gives you maybe 50-degree field of view, which is about this, right? So imagine a little virtual box where there's a virtual thing in it, and if I move the box over, the virtual thing disappears. Right? VR is this, right?
It blocks out. The difference is it blocks out the stuff you don't see. And so you don't have peripheral vision. So all you're focused on is what you see. And you don't get that window effect.
But that's one thing. The other thing is, if I really want to see a virtual thing, like I'm playing Beat Saber or I was just playing Supernatural, right? And I'm trying to hit a virtual thing flying at my head. I don't care about the real world. I want to only see that virtual thing, and I want to see it in as sharp a detail as possible, and I want to see as many polygons on that thing as possible so it looks better, and I want it to come at me faster than in these things. And also, I don't want it to be ghosted. With HoloLens, if I see a virtual thing right here, I see the screen behind it. I see through the virtual layer. It's ghosted. It doesn't have the same affordance of, really. You're not going to enjoy watching a long movie in AR, I don't think.
Right.
Short one, yes. TikTok, fuck yeah.
And so let's
watch a movie. You want to be on a black screen.
Apple's becoming a media company. They're becoming a services company. They launched Apple TV Plus. Why do you think they're not going to build the ultimate personal media viewer, which is what an iPad is and a phone is, and we don't, we don't look at our phone when we're walking.
Because,
we do. Sorry.
They actually have, I heard, hundreds of prototypes over in Cupertino of different kinds of devices they're building. They could easily make one, and I keep hearing rumors they have one, but they decided not to ship it. We'll see if that continues to be true, because my brother-in-law used to work for Steve Jobs, right? And I used to work at Microsoft. And every couple of months, he would come home, oh, Steve just killed the phone project. And I would be, oh, okay, that's nice. And then a couple of months later, he'd be like, oh, the phone project's back on, And then a couple more months would go by, oh, he killed the phone project again. Now my best friend is one of the 14 guys who built the iPhone. I know the whole story. They went through several different prototypes, and they just were not getting to the product that Steve had in his mind. Yeah. And when it finally got there, it got shipped. They're not able to give the customer experience without the dangers. Did you see the video over the weekend where a guy was in VR
on a television?
And he jumped into the television?
Richie's plank. I wanted to bring that on the show. I'll show it to you guys on the next live show. It's crazy.
It's crazy. I did something similar in the Stanford lab with Jeremy Balinson. He had me walk across the plank, and I was freaked out.
Yeah.
And I knew I was on a conference floor, right?
But we've all done that, and I love it. But and that takes us to point number one, which is VR isn't safe. But I can make the same argument for walking down the street looking at my phone, and I can make the same argument for wearing my AirPods too loud and they're going to blow up my ears, or I don't hear the car coming, and when I'm riding a bike, is that enough to stop?
I get it. I play a lot of VR. I love VR. But for an Apple, they see lawsuits, they see trouble, they see pain, they see danger. And I used to run a
that hasn't stopped them from bringing products to market in the past. What they do, like CarPlay, for example, they brought the smartphone out. It became addictive, and then they said, "All right, let's do CarPlay because people are fucking using this while they're driving, and it's dangerous." Now, maybe that wasn't their reason, but that's one of the benefits of it. So let's make it easy to use. But that took 5, 6, 7 years for that to happen. Yeah. So I question whether safety is enough to stop Apple from bringing out a VR headset. I'm taking that round. I'm taking the VR safety thing.
What year? That's the question.
What year? Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, because if you take it 10 years, you're getting a device that does both of these in one device.
And so John Wester just asked on Twitch, he said, what if you put a pair of Nreal AR glasses inside a VR headset? And so I think the question that I want to ask is, pass-through video is getting better. The XR2 chip from Qualcomm, really low latency pass-through video. The Quest, nice butt crack there, Robert.
Sorry.
I call that a coin slot. I'm in the arcade business. We used to call that the coin slot.
Hey, I've been naked on the internet 4 times. I
love live television.
Sorry. I had to get the Quest.
Quest, yeah.
Because the Quest has 4 video cameras on it, right? They're black and white video cameras. So when you're inside here now, you can see the real house. But it's in a blurry black and white version.
And it's laggy, and it's disorienting, and it's terrible.
They get sick. This brings up one of my issues. People get sick.
Point number 7, VR makes some people sick, yeah.
My wife can't play VR. She gets sick in it. And I've tried many times with all the different devices. Right?
But I'll tell you, so here's my point on that. Cars make people sick, too. It's actually not the car, it's the driver. And I don't think VR makes people sick. I think people who make shitty VR experiences make people sick. And I've been, I've railed
She
against
says
this
she's
for
sick even
years.
just getting it on. She just says,
Really?
I don't feel comfortable. I don't like it. I want it off.
Did she have a
Right?
bad experience that created trauma that triggers that? Or do you think it's just,
Brain
is
tight.
she
My
claustrophobic
autistic son
maybe?
can't wear it. My autistic son, he puts it on and says it hurts my eyes, and I can't figure out what's. He can't communicate with me what's going wrong.
Yeah.
So I can't fix anything.
And that's
right?
interesting because there have been studies that show it actually helps autistic kids learn, but everybody's
Absolutely.
individual. And so your point is that there's enough people that don't like VR that Apple's going to say, we're not bringing a product to market because there's too much controversy or discomfort or whatever, and we're all about customer experience.
Not until they can fix all those problems or bring you an AR device that does really badass immersion.
Yeah.
Because what do you get in VR that you don't get in AR? Immersion, right? And the ability to feel like you're inside the media, inside the video game, inside the movie, right? And you can't get that real well with an AR, with field of view of 50 degrees, right? And you get better color and better brightness and better sharpness in VR. So watching a movie is better. I'd rather have VR in my living room, right, than AR. Because AR, I don't need to see my living room anymore. I know what my living room looks like. I don't need to see it.
Yeah.
And I really don't care that things come clawing out of my walls. It's a neat effect. I mean, on the HoloLens, there's a game called Fragments where aliens blow holes in your walls and then crawl through the walls and then come at you, right? It's like, what? That's really sick.
Yeah.
But it's sort of it's a parlor trick, right? After you got used to the parlor trick, all right, give me Call of Duty back. I want to go back to the game that really has the immersion and has the rapid fire and has all my friends on it, right? And this is a problem. This is another problem for VR. I can't play with that many of my friends yet. Most of my friends still don't have VR, even though I keep telling them you should get VR.
Nobody has AR either, right? Even fewer people have AR than VR. So, but that wasn't one of your 7 points, so I'm not gonna take a point away from you on that one.
Yeah.
But I am gonna give you VR makes people sick. I've been railing about that one for a long time. I do think it's the experience makers. I do think the technology is going to get better, and as latency goes down. And I think if anybody can solve that, it's Apple, right? If anybody can solve it.
Facebook is working on it. The refresh rate on the screens on the Quest is about, is it 60 hertz or 90 hertz?
I think they went to like some weird number like 72, which was really controversial, right?
The index is much higher, 115 or 120 hertz, and the new Quest that'll come out next year is going to have a much higher refresh rate.
Yeah.
When you start getting more resolution and more refresh rate, some of the sickness stuff goes away because sickness is caused because your eyes and your ears are out of sync, and your body thinks that's because you ate some poison and starts causing you to get sick, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of science there that they're trying to fix that. There's even some electronics that are trying to get the inner ear to sync up with the visual so that you don't get as nauseous, right? Stuff like that. Yeah. But a lot of those approaches aren't yet on the market, and they're not perfected yet, and they're not perfected for everybody yet, right?
Yeah. So I just want to call out to Tony. I want to call out to Tony Rogers, who's watching right now, and I follow Tony on LinkedIn. I love Tony. Absolutely one of the smartest guys I know in the industry, and I learn a lot of what I know from watching Tony. And so Tony says I win, by the way, on the contest. He says he's winning. So all right, let's go to. So you were talking about
and keep in mind,
social. Like your friends don't have VR. And VR's not a. Go ahead. Keep
in mind, the scale of Apple requires a different answer than the scale of a Facebook, right? Facebook can be happy selling 1 million of these. Apple can't. Apple, to move the needle for its shareholder, has to sell 20 million.
Point 2, VR doesn't move the needle. Let's go to that one because you brought it up. So and maybe times have changed. Maybe times have changed, but the Apple Watch only sold, was it 10 million in the first year units? You were saying they have to sell 200 million units, and I'm assuming you mean over the life of the product, right?
Someday,
yeah. And
you got to skip path to selling. When you go to pitch Tim, you got to have a slide, the market size, right? Yeah. The market size is big on AR, and the market size on VR is questionable.
And right? Apple TV hasn't really sold that. It took 5 years to get to 6 million units. and they called that a little project, right? And so when you're talking, but they had a vision of being a media company 10 years ago. Nobody saw that coming, really. And so they're like, let's just experiment. And if this is the future of computing, which I know you believe it is, and I believe it is, and a lot of the people watching the show are going to believe it is, don't you think Apple's willing to just say, you know what, we know it's going to get there, and if it takes 10 years, that's fine. But if if they believe VR is the future of computing, why not start now?
Apple never's first.
Yeah. But they're not. Oculus has proven it works. The Quest is a great device with lots of room for improvement. Right? The Quest is the Zune player, right? Or whatever the fucking
Quest is
MP3
the
player
Creative Labs audio player. The Quest is the Creative Labs audio player.
There you go. Creative Labs. Yep, absolutely.
Or it's the BlackBerry, right?
Yep.
You know, it proves there's a market, and it still took another 10 years for Apple to come in the phone business market, right?
Yeah.
And Apple knows that. Apple knows that it can always wait for a decade or two, and it can let a major industry spring up. Like Nokia had a huge industry of mobile phones, right? And they jump in with a mobile phone, and they just took it all. Right, they killed RIM and Nokia within 4 years.
They make markets and take markets, and those are the two things that they've been shown they can do. Yeah.
So they also, if you're an executive at Apple, they teach you about the customer journey, and what they mean by that is the customer today is very used to holding a phone in their hand and swiping, right? Putting glasses on their face, that's a big step. That's a big step. For me and you, we're there. We've already taken the red pill, and we're it. But most people haven't, and most people have a lot of issues with putting something like this on their face, right? And not to mention, you can't even get a demo of this.
Yeah.
You go to Best Buy here in Silicon Valley and you ask for a demo and say, hey, I have $500 to spend on a VR machine. They won't even take it out of the shelf to show to you. They say, no, we don't do demos.
Yeah, well, they tried to do that and they backed off. Like basically they pulled those demos in the early
days. They said come back Friday when the Facebook guy's here.
Yeah.
You know, they're trying to fix the problem, but you know, Best Buy doesn't know how to demo this. Moving the needle, you know, I learned this at Microsoft because I told Bill Gates he should buy Skype before eBay did, and a bunch of other things. And I got a big long email from Steven Sinofsky, who now is a venture capitalist, and it had the words business value repeated 13 times. He was running Office back then. And he said, yeah, you're probably right. I get a letter like this every couple of weeks from somebody who says we should do this, do that, you know, and until you can prove the business value, go away because you're wasting my time and I'm running $100 billion business. So,
and I think when you look at the wearables business, I remember Steve Jobs coming out when he did the original iPod release. I was at a company called eCast, and we were doing digital music, and we bought RioPort, which was the MP3 player, the software company behind the Creative Labs Rio MP3 player, and we wound up, and he wound up coming out and said, and someday everybody's going to be wearing little white headphones, walking around listening to iPods all the time, and people thought he was crazy. And so I think now they're a fashion statement.
This is the new cocaine, man. It's even white.
People are wearing fake AirPods as fashion statements now with bling on them. It's freaking crazy, right? And so I think you're right. I actually think that they are looking at massive wearables markets. And the glasses is the thing that they're going to go after for that reason. It's a massive market.
Watch, right? You can even see it. Watch, ears, glasses, right?
Yeah.
And you got to make them feel like they're part of the same family, right?
We're going to give that one to Mr. Scoble. Number 3, can't be used on enough. Oh, no, number 2.
If you're at a smaller company, you don't have to care about that scale, right? You can be much more innovative at an Nreal, for instance, is a little Chinese company that nobody's heard of, right?
Yeah.
And they're making a pair of glasses that's very similar to what Apple's going to bring out. You can buy them sometime this year, right? So you're going to be able to be a year or 2, maybe even 3 faster than Apple. Now, Apple has huge advantages that Nreal will never have, like ecosystem advantage, right? When I turn the crown on my watch, my AirPods get louder, right? That's ecosystem.
Yeah.
And that kind of tie.
That deep level integration creates great consumer experience, which is what they're all about. Yeah, totally.
And Nreal's never going to be able to match that, and Nreal's never going to have the retail store chains. I mean, Apple has 500 stores in the richest cities in the world, right? And they're never going to have the supply chain. No, that's not true. They are in China, so they can walk across the street to a factory and get things made. But Apple puts more money into the factory systems than Nreal has so far. And so the factory owner is going to give the best machines to Apple.
Right? And they can lock out components too. If they see a supplier, they can just go buy the supplier, right? They have 200 billion in cash, 250 billion in cash. Yeah,
or buy the entire company, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So Alpha Omega Graphics says, what do you think will be the killer use case? And will there be one for XR to hit mass consumer adoption? Because people keep talking about killer apps and killer use cases. And what do you see?
I look at it differently, right? I don't look at it like a nerd does, which is, how can I put aliens coming out of my walls and stuff like that? Look at it like Apple does, is how are we going to disrupt these? Now, if I put on a pair of digital glasses instead of these, first of all, these are $1,500. I don't know if you knew that. These are the best frames you can buy. They're titanium. They're the best lenses. My eyes are really bad, so I have progressive lenses with coatings on the best coatings.
Yep.
And these are badass. I've had these for 2 years, and they're not even scratched yet. They're really great, right? Really great lenses, really great. Feels great. They're lightweight. So how is Apple going to get me to take these off and put an Apple pair of glasses on? Well, you start thinking about, all right, you're going to have an eye sensor in my eye, right? It's going to see the back of my eye, so it's going to know I have cataracts before I even go in for an eye checkup. And it'll say that. It'll say, hey, we just sensed you have cataracts. Do you mind if we rearrange the world a little bit so that you can see better? Well, if you have cataracts and you can't see right in the middle of where your eye is, you can put words around it, right? And help people see better. You can rearrange things. You can zoom things in a little bit. You can add some contrast. Somebody wrote an article that Apple's...
So you can enlarge text if you're reading, if you're farsighted.
Right? So you just start there. You just start walking through what could you do with glasses now.
And we know Apple's big on accessibility, right? I hadn't even considered this, Bob. I got to be honest with you. Like I tend to fool myself in thinking I see shit. I hadn't actually considered the accessibility angle for a pair of Apple smart glasses.
I have another one. Get a modern phone, one of these phones with 3 lenses on it, right? You could buy Sony or whatever, Samsung or whatever. It doesn't matter. And pull up the camera and go out like at twilight when it's just getting dark. And just look at the difference between what you can see on the screen versus what you can see in the real life. I did that a couple nights ago with a friend. In fact, Apple has a super system coming that's going to make this thing even sicker with AI to really add some detail at night. But I could see so much more detail looking through the camera at the world than I can see with my natural eye with these $1,500 pair of glasses on.
Yeah, interesting.
Right? So imagine walking around with these glasses and they're assisting you seeing in a dark alley or whatever. And that's before you even put a SLAM map, one of these new maps on the real world where it knows what the thing looks like in the daytime, or it knows what it looks like in 3D, so it can turn on every polygon and show you what it looks like in daytime, right?
Yeah. Now, I'm having a hard time believing something like that's coming in 2022 or 2023.
It's coming in these glasses, I'm telling you. So that stuff is almost table stakes. Then you start thinking about what period of time are we in right now? Everybody's on Zoom. Everybody's doing what we did. I just had 4 Zoom calls in this house today alone. I had 2 kids on Zoom calls with their teachers, right? And my wife is on Zoom calls with her coworkers and setting up her conference. And now what if we could all have some glasses and we could be in 3D together and playing basketball like in Rec Room? My kid plays Rec Room 2-3 hours a day now because he can play with other kids. He can build things in 3D and walk.
So that takes us to point number 1. You said you banned VR from your house because it wasn't safe, because you had a bunch of kids playing in the basement and your father-in-law or something walked through and hitting the nuts or
And
something.
yeah, I have to warn people.
You have video of that? Because that would
like
be
with
viral.
Supernatural, I'm a madman, man. It's a violent game, man. I have to hit things over there and hit things over there and hit things over there, and it gets me to work out, right? So if you have somebody walking into your play space who doesn't know the rules and doesn't know, you're in danger and you get whacked, it hurts, right? Yeah. And you saw that guy jump through a TV and break a $2,000 TV, right? Yeah. And might have hurt himself, right?
It looked bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of places where VR isn't usable. And that's what I keep it. Here's another one, right? Sitting on a subway. Are you going to wear VR while you have a $2,000 Macintosh and a laptop and a bag?
No, but I don't use my laptop when I'm sitting on a subway either. Like, not everything Apple does is something that you use everywhere, right? All the time.
Well, I see people on laptops or on phones, right? And computing on the subway, right?
On phones, but I'm not going to take out my 16-inch MacBook Pro on a fucking subway in New York and start typing on it, right? I mean, that would be insane. But
say it's even worse with VR because you can't see.
No, absolutely.
You can't see the person stealing your laptop.
But what about pass-through video? Like Oculus just announced this week that they're going to light up. They're going to do a new feature, which is something comes into your Guardian, it's going to turn on the pass-through cameras. Like that's here today.
They're starting to fix the problems.
Yep. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what makes this an interesting game. Is VR is Oculus going to extend VR into AR and take over market share before Apple goes from AR into VR, right? Because in 10 years, we have one pair of device that does both VR and AR. It does it all, right? Yeah. It takes you seamlessly from real world to a completely virtualized world. And people argue with me about this, but when you get an AR kit app, right, and you're playing with AR, and there's a virtual door here, right? And you walk into the virtual door and there's a virtual room there, that's VR because you can only see virtual pixels, right, on your phone. But it's just, it's not immersive.
Yeah.
It's not like this, right? So someday we're getting a pair of glasses that solves all the problems, right?
So it's a function of which vector do you come in? Are you going in through VR or are you coming in through AR? Because eventually it's going to merge and it's all going to be one thing. Yeah,
I think it's going to merge. And Tim Cook says it's going to merge someday, that eventually you don't need a phone to compute, right? That you do all your computing in glasses. And you can get tastes of that today in some of these products, right? But the optics just aren't sharp enough and they're not ready for that.
Now, John Wester says Oculus Quest 2, which HD color pass-through for under $500 will destroy an Apple Glass Lite product.
You're not going to wear that thing while mountain biking. No, this is the argument I'm having. Yes, if you're sitting down or in a room like this and playing a VR game, it's going to be more immersive and it's going to be more fun. But you're never going to wear that Quest. First of all, the Quest, even if it's a third the size of this and it's just a band, it still is going to look dorky. It's still not social. There's a whole bunch of social contract problems that come in here. I can't use it while on date night, right? I'll wear that.
Hold on. All right, hold on. I shouldn't be looking at my phone on date night too, but I do. And I shouldn't be staring at my watch and look at my notifications while I'm interviewing on a live streaming show.
We both have the
social contracts out the window, dude. I'm taking that one. So
the food and Facebooking it. I mean, come on.
All right, so I got to tell you, I figured I was going to come in and sweep the board, and I was going to give you the show because I can do that. But I'm giving Bob 5. I'm taking 2 because ultimately,
because
I can do whatever I want. It's my fucking show, and you're the guest. And I want you to feel good here, and I want you to come back. But ultimately, I do agree with you. Maybe not for all the reasons you posted, but Apple is looking at major markets, and I can't wait. I'm like, seriously, I just got goosebumps thinking about that product. I'm a fucking fanboy. I buy everything Apple.
And we haven't even talked about some of the AI that's coming, right? Because Siri is being rebuilt from scratch.
I hope so, because Siri fucking sucks. If you hear me,
do you know why?
Hey Siri, you're worthless.
Do you know why? Do you know technically? She'll tell you she's worthless too. Do you know why? Because I've seen the back end. The three guys who started Siri came to my house, and I was the first one to see Siri, and I saw the back end.
The original Siri I liked until Apple bought it, and anyway.
Well, there was a bunch of reasons some features got taken away, because when an Apple takes over a product like that, there's all sorts of business and renegotiations, right? And everybody wants the money, right? Yeah. If Apple comes, hey, put some money. When Siri, the Siri little startup comes, oh, you don't have any money. All right, yeah, we'll do a business deal. Siri is hard coded. Here's my favorite question to ask it. How many people are checked in at the San Francisco Ritz-Carlton on Foursquare? Siri understands me just fine. In fact, we could do that. Hey, Siri, how many people are checked in on the San Francisco Ritz-Carlton on Foursquare? And did it see it properly?
Okay, I found this on the web for how many people are checked in on the San Francisco Ritz-Carlton on Foursquare. Check it out.
That's my experience with Siri.
Yeah. And do you know why it fails? Because all right, so there's several systems. When you talk to Siri, it understood me just fine. It's the first system actually understood me. It doesn't understand my son, and it doesn't understand some people with accents, right? So there's a first layer that has to understand you. Then there's about 80 lines of code that have to be written to hook up to the Foursquare API. There's actually an answer to that on Foursquare. Foursquare knows how many people are checked in on any property on Foursquare, right? And Foursquare actually has an API. So there's a way for a software developer to hook up to it. So Siri, if it was smart, could hook up to it, get the answer, translate it back, and say, hey, there's 4 people checked in at the Ritz. It doesn't do that. It fails and goes to Bing because it's hard-coded. And the two of the guys who started Siri left Apple and started a company called Viv. And they showed me a much more flexible system where the code gets written as you talk. So Siri is being rewritten right now in this new method.
Thank God, because and look,
we'll see, because it might be worse at first. Yeah. I believe it's going to be worse at first until it starts learning.
Yeah.
Because these systems are all AI. And like my Tesla car started out being pretty shitty, and now it's getting pretty good.
And Apple Maps, look, the new version of Apple Maps started out a little rough, and now it's better than Google Maps in some areas. Like we went down to Torquay to go surfing in outside of Melbourne here, and we stayed in an Airbnb that was on a new street that Google Maps didn't have, and Apple Maps had it. And I was like, I've never seen that happen before. Yeah. And so, now, there's some smart guys. They're going to figure this shit out.
Think about what Siri is about to get from you when you put on glasses, too.
Yeah, the whole world.
Well, it knows when you're wearing a pair of glasses that are small, but like this, these things know where they are down to micromillimeters. That's not true on your phone. Your phone really doesn't know where it is.
It kind of knows what block you're on, maybe, sometimes.
Yeah. This is going to know what millimeter you're on, right? And it can see everything in 3D. So now think about audio. These things have an array microphone. At Microsoft, I met a software engineer who built an array microphone. It cost him $10,000. It had 4 microphones. And he wrote some code so that he could focus the attention of those 4 microphones on a spot. And so if he knew you were talking right here, he could get rid of all the other noise and really do a badass microphone, even better than the microphones we use on the show. So these things have more processing than an iPhone 4 in them, right? Think about that.
Wow.
There's more CPU in this little thing that costs $250 than was in your iPhone 4 just a few years ago. And it has a focusable microphone and processing in it. But it doesn't know what to focus on.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't know what you're trying to focus on.
Yeah.
What happens when you have glasses and I'm looking at your mouth in a crowded bar and it knows how to focus the audio on your mouth?
Wow.
Then these things are going to get really badass.
Wow.
Right? So,
wow. Awesome. Amazing.
This is the advantage of having data thinking throughout your product line. Right? If you can think about how you're going to use data in new ways to make the glasses better, you're going to put the old glasses industry out of business because eventually the utility just gets layered on, layered on, layered on.
They're doing with the watch business, right? I mean, they're literally just crushing the watch business.
I don't like this watch.
I don't either. I like since you. So let me ask you, if you.
But you know what? Do you know what got me to put this watch on?
What?
VR. Because when I'm playing Supernatural, it hooks up to the Apple Watch to watch my heart rate.
Yeah, interesting.
And so I get extra points while I'm playing Supernatural if I play. And it shows me a neat graph, like I'm doing 150 beats per minute, heartbeats per minute right now, right? Yeah. So now I feel better about my exercise because it's tracking my exercise, right?
Yeah. Well, I think we're connected. I think we're connected on Supernatural. So I haven't been in a few days. I'm gonna have to get back in. And
today's was really hard, man. I complained on Twitter. It's sometimes their things are so hard to hit because they're happening so fast, and it was an EDM day.
Yeah, and so Tony Rogers. Tony Rogers posted something great. I love you, Tony. I love you, man. Thanks for showing up. He said it won't only autofocus, but auto translate languages. Like so. One of the things that I've been excited about around VR and AR and all of these technologies is the ability to destroy borders, to bring us closer together. The internet was the first version of that. And, and but we still have language barriers and we have presence barriers. And the ability to now all of a sudden, like, remove the language barrier. I used to travel around the world. Now I just barely go to the bathroom. Yeah, right? Real-time translation and doing that to audio. Yeah. While we're talking and looking at somebody in VR with telepresence is going to change the world. It's going to be the biggest paradigm shift for humanity that we've seen in our lifetimes.
Imagine you have a virtual screen right here, and it's doing this while you're talking to me in Chinese.
I'm putting it in my headphones. And it's translating it into my headphones, and I hear it. And it syncs the audio maybe even with oh my God, my head.
It's not just hear it. I can see the text while it's trying to talk to me. I'd rather see the text so I can actually listen to the intonation of the person, right? I was in China using Google Translate like this, just holding the phone and watching what they were saying. And I was talking to people, no problem. And they were talking to me, no problem, right?
Crazy shit, man.
Yeah.
Mr. Scoble, I want to thank you so much for joining.
We could go for about 8 more hours. I mean, we haven't even touched autonomous cars.
We're gonna have to
factories.
I'm gonna send you a keynote I did in Russia last year about the Matrix. I want you to take a look at that, and I want to come on and talk about the future of this augmented world. And check out the book Infinite Retina on Apple. On is it on iBooks?
No, it's on Amazon.
It's on and Kindle. It's on Amazon and Kindle.
Kindle, yeah. Which is Amazon.
Yep.
So yeah.
And
got 5 stars from the head of AR at Qualcomm. So that's a real thrill, and Tony says it's a badass book too. So
yeah, listen to Tony. Follow Tony too, and Robert Scoble, if you don't know, at Scobleizer on Twitter. He's there. He lives there. He sleeps there 24/7. And so reach out, stay in touch, like and share this shit. And one really quickly, we're making a change to the show. So when I started this thing, it was we started weekly. Actually, and it's just turning out to be too much work. So we're going to change the cadence, and we're going to do every show is going to be on Tuesday. Every other week, we're going to do a live show like this with a deep dive interview. And then on the alternating Tuesdays, we're going to do the news show, and we're going to bring you everything that's happening in the world of VR, AR, and all the R. So next Tuesday, we'll see you. We're going to be talking about virtual health. I'm going to be bringing you the fitness edition. We'll be talking about, hey, maybe you can get me an interview with Chris Milk from Supernatural. He's been ignoring my emails.
He ignores everything, man. He's a rock star.
He is a rock star. You're a rock star.
By the way, he was... he showed me VR. He was very early in showing me VR. He showed me VR in his tent in a camp that venture capitalists had. And he's a former music video producer, right?
Yeah.
And he's a badass. He built a special microphone. You should have him talk about audio because he built a binaural audio microphone, one of these array microphones with 8 or 16 microphones around a little head.
Yeah, wow.
And he was thinking about how to make audio work in VR so that the sound would come from the right direction. So
yeah, smart guy, man. So Robert, we'll see you on the interwebs. I really appreciate your time, everybody. We'll see you next Tuesday. We'll be talking about VR and fitness. And maybe Bob and I will have lost a couple of more kilos by then playing Supernatural.
I'm at least getting some cardio, in this pandemic lockdown.
All right, peace, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thanks.